Today's an exciting day. I am really excited about what we are about to experience. I'm actually going to go meet with Alan, the owner of Every Fiber Coffee Shop downtown Seaford. It's a new experience that's about to hit this town, and especially his building. This building is filled with history of the local community. So follow me. So Alan, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come meet with you and have a phenomenal conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you came by. This has been an interesting process, so it's a lot to get through.
The main question, first question I have for you, why Sussex? Why an individual like yourself that you travel the world chose to come back to Sussex?
Well, I mean, it's my home, and with the way we kind of looked at our mission statement, it's it's history. It's the family stuff. It's all those connections. I'm third generation business owner now in Seaford, on my dad's side of the family. So it's been a big deal for me. It's real good.
So talk to me about your background. I know that you and we've talked a little bit about the kind of work that you've done. So where have you gone? Were you born in Seaford?
I was not born in Seaford. I was born in Wilmington. But we moved back down here. I guess it was right about the time I was born. Dad bought the funeral home here in Seaford. He's from Seaford, born and raised. His brothers lived down here. So he wanted to move home back then, I guess. So he bought that and worked on that and started to build it while also working in Wilmington and raising me and then my brother and all that. So we moved down here, I want to say, late 80s, early 90s. We moved down and kind of took that plunge, he walked away from everything he had going on up there to do that full time. That's a heck of a dice roll back then, with the family. So my mom spent 30 years or so working for DuPont in Wilmington, and her and her sisters were career DuPonters up there. So for us to pull the plug and come down here, there was a lot of sacrifices made. I remember a lot of the early years and how difficult it was, and how much work he had to put into not just the work, but restoring the funeral home and all the maintenance and the summers we spent on the roof replacing roofs as a kid. You don't see that anymore. Nowadays it's you don't get you don't see kids standing up on a roof with their dads stripping a roof off in the middle of the summer. So that's kind of where all that started. So I've got some roots here.
And I've seen that you've carried that even with the building, what you're doing now. So where do you go to school?
I graduated from Seaford in the late 90s and bounced around, did a little bit of college, but I went out to Utah and did some certifications and some training with Microsoft. So I was a Microsoft certified engineer prior to Y2K, and came back here and got drafted to help the hospital get through Y2K. So all the stuff that didn't happen is because of a lot of people that put in a lot of work.
Understood.
So I ended up staying there for about 10 years. So yeah. And I drove up and down this street for 10 years on my way to work.
So what made you like come back to Seaford, stay in Seaford in Sussex County? I know that you had roots, your parents here, but you had gone away for a while.
Well, I bought a house in the early 2000s. It was always home for me. And I did go away. I did work in Baltimore, but I did a lot of commuting, and I never sold the house, never rented the house. Was never gone very long, but there was still something that always brought you home.
Yeah.
The rat race, the Baltimore, the DC. I mean, I love the towns. I love going and doing it, but it's just it does suck the life out of you.
That's right. And now that you say that, I see some of that flavor here. I noticed that you like history.
Yeah.
And also the the little details, man. You've done a phenomenal job in this place, man, and that's really why attracted us to come and want to meet you. And then once you and I started talking, and you started talking about your history, I'm like, wait a minute, this dude, like you got history here, and also you are committed to this community. With the more and more I talk to people, it's like everybody I talk to are committed to their community, and I'm glad to see what you're doing, man. So talk to me about this building, man. How old is this building?
So it was built in 1911. The Masons, who were still tenants upstairs, were meeting down the street. They were the first charter, the Masonic charter, chartered after the Civil War. So they were chartered in 1866. So they were meeting here in town from 1866 to the present. So in 1911, they built this building, moved in 1912. And one of the Masons was Sam Stein. So he was who Stein Highway is named after. So he moved in on the first floor, they moved in on the second, and this is what they built. So over the years, it's been everything from a beauty salon to a barber shop to a men's shop to a dress shop. And most recently, it was your sister's closet who moved down the street. So it's gone through one transformation after another, but upstairs has always been that Masonic Lodge.
I am really digging the design of this place, man. Talk to me about the design of this place. What went into it?
An awful lot of this is original stuff that we salvaged when we did the restoration. You want to go take a look at a couple things?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go. Well, like we were talking, that's all the original hardwood floors. When we bought the building over the years, there's 7 layers of floor stacked up. So all the way up to some laminate, all the way down to tile, and pretty much anything you can think of for the last 100 years, they put down on top of that original floor. So we pulled every inch that we could salvage and flipped it over, and I hand sanded every one of these.
You did?
Yeah. So there was a lot of board feet to mess with, and then Bud put it up here and we sealed it all. So that's about what it looked like underneath. So that's the back side of the flooring. So if you go in the basement, the flooring that's left looks identical to that.
That is awesome, man.
And it was all put together with about 4-inch long hand-forged square nails. We'll probably talk about hard to take it apart. It was not fun. And then over here, in the 50s, for about a year, I think it was about 8 months or so, in the basement, it was Seaford's first police department and jail.
No way.
So the front door that's on the corner of the Nationwide building was the entrance, and they had a back entrance.
That's right. I saw the picture.
Yeah. So these three grates were on the windows, and around the corner, there's one that was on the inside of that back door. Metal frame still on that door.
No way.
So we kept the metal frame on one side. So
awesome.
yeah, I mean these are heavy duty for the 50s.
That's right.
They weren't messing around. So with all the issues that we had, one of the problems that we found with the doors in the place, with over the years of them layering floors and the structural issues, I couldn't reuse any of the original doors. It broke my heart.
No way.
But I was able to find these doors out of a DuPont estate over at the beach that was built at the same time. So the doors match everything that's in the building and upstairs, the original wooden doorknobs and everything. So I had all new door frames built to get that set in there. And the window, I'm going to frost and put the Stein & Company logo on. I didn't want to lose that piece of history in here.
That is awesome.
So-
Hey, and so you was also talking, we can look at the pictures
Yeah.
in a minute, but what's going on here?
So I talked about structural issues. So when we bought the building with the 7 layers and everything they did over the years to try to get the place straight, the floors did this. And when I tore it all apart, it literally was, the floor dropped over a foot from the front of the building to the back. So termites, old age, the whole 9 yards. This is the end of the center support beam. We replaced the beam from that back wall till about the front of the coffee bar and replaced everything structurally underneath to be able to support a kitchen and to keep this thing standing. So that thing was all that was holding the floor up.
Wow. It looks like an artifact.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean,
something
like almost like you're gonna use it as a pencil.
Yeah,
So
man.
I mean, and it weighs
it's
nothing.
light. It's
It weighs nothing. Look at this. I mean that's that is all that was left after 100 years. So we were fortunate enough to be able to save the structure. So the other thing we found while we were going through everything was this safe. Now, as close as I can figure, it is a 1950s Mosler. So the research I've done on them, there's only 3 places you could find one of these. Federal buildings, banks, and high-end jewelry stores. So the closest we've been able to trace this is to the building on the corner, which is now Lored. It was a bank. So we think it was one of the office safes. The guy who owned this building also owned that building. So we kind of feel that that's where it came from. I can't confirm it, but it was here. I love old safes. Right. Stuck it in the wall, and we're going to use it. And that actually has countermeasures built into it.
Oh, it does?
I talked to a antique locksmith, and he said, whatever you do, don't drill it. He's like, so we talk about old buildings. This is your building.
Oh wait, look at that. That's Linda Vista.
That's Linda Vista. So back after World War II, when my grandfather came back, he built that building and opened Sussex Hardware.
So that's your grandfather?
That's my grandfather right there. So with 3 other hardware stores on the block, he opened a hardware store, and they had one of the largest Christmas displays.
Yeah. Man, look at that.
Yeah, so you see all of it here in this picture. So we talk about, history and remembering heritage, and that's it right there.
Appliances, Sussex Hardware Company, man. How long were they there?
Honestly, I don't know the dates on it. I've been still digging into some of the history.
Look at the side of the building. So they actually, that was like a garage entrance. Mm-hmm. And the Seaford executive building on the side. This is awesome. Look at the car, man.
Yeah. I mean, look at the tag on it.
Yeah.
Look at the old porcelain tags.
Right.
So we talk about the heritage and the history, and then you talk about connections. Well, I mean, look at us.
That's right.
You're in there, and I'm here. So what is this? 65, almost 70 years later.
That's right, man.
So I mean, that's why we're doing this. Yeah. I mean, that's why I did all of this. Yeah. So in '58, the basement was used as Seaford's first full-fledged police department and jail. Up until then, they had a little substation down at the bottom of Pine Street, but it couldn't house anybody. So this was the back door. This was the original exterior door, and then on the inside of that metal grate on the wall right there was on the inside to keep everything locked up. So I travel a lot, so going to historic towns and historic places.
Well, you were in Baltimore for a while. So
I spent 3 years in Baltimore, and with who I worked for, owning as much property, I managed a lot of the infrastructure and all those. So it was fun for me because part of Charles Center and all those buildings, I could get to all those buildings underground. Okay. So we could bounce around, and one of the buildings was an old bank. So like the old ornate metalwork and all that was just really neat.
Talking about underground, let's go check out that basement, man.
All right.
I'm ready for that.
So it's a little messy, but we'll go slide down there. So this is the metal frame right here. Yeah, this right here. So that metal door was right on this side. So we took this side off, but that metal frame right there, look at that. That's 1/4 inch chunks of steel right there. So it's a mess now, but this was the police department. So in some spots you can actually see the checkered floor, if I can find a spot. I've painted over a lot of it. But they had, white and black checker tile down here, and, it was slat and plaster ceiling. The cool part is they did their first fingerprinting here for Seaford.
Oh, they did?
So I have a news article there was a desk right here. There was a desk right here, and there's a picture of them leaning over the desk, and you can see this window. And see the blue pillar? You can see those blue pillars on the center beams when they were here too. And that coat rack and everything was original. So back in here, there was couple of jail cells from best I can figure looking at the floor plan. And this was the bathroom. There was a shower back in this corner. You can see by all the concrete. and then this concrete ran all the way here, and these were your urinals and everything. So those were all the lines that ran for all the toilets and the urinals. So, since we're doing history and we're trying to keep some of that alive, this is 7 miles of the Nanticoke River. So this is from Route, and it's to scale, from Route 13 to the Delaware, Maryland line. So it kind of traces some of the history, showing where we come from. So in the early 1600s, John Smith landed.
I see that.
Yeah, Captain John Smith. So that's the first guy to get all the way down to Nanticoke, landed here adjacent to Phillips Landing. So that's kind of where it all started. And then you've got everything from Woodland Ferry, which has been in operation for almost forever. The DuPont plant, which, Seaford owes a lot to, what it's become due to that. The flagship, which you've seen out on the highway. So, and then we got some stuff downtown. So you've got the original railroad bridge, the train station. That's my dad's funeral home. Your building right there. Then our building right here. Then you've got Mount Olivet across the street, and some of the stuff done down on the river. There was originally a toll bridge at the bottom of Market Street.
Where? No way.
To get across to Nanticoke, you had to pay a toll.
Now that I didn't know.
So those are some of the cool history things that the Historical Society has helped us fill in some of the blanks. So you've got Mount Olivet there from the late 1890s, and so it was cool to just kind of showcase some of those things. So that we're literally, if those trees weren't there, we could see the river.
That's right.
So Seaford owes an awful lot to the river, and an awful lot of its history to the river. So we wanted to incorporate that into the building, and I couldn't figure out how to do it until I saw someone do an epoxy river table, and I said, what would be neat is if we did the Nanticoke River in it. So I spent 8 months trying to find a group that could take on a project like that, and I had a couple people really enthused about it, and it pushed a lot of people's capabilities way past the limit. And so there's not a CNC table big enough within 500 miles to do this table. They had to do it on a smaller table and do it in 3 sections. There's 45 hours of CNC work on this table.
Everything has been amazing, right? My mind is blown, but this here.
Yeah.
And then beautiful view.
Yeah, beautiful Nanticoke. Yep. Wow. High Street, and the more we get into this, the more people will be walking up and down this street. So you're familiar with Stein Highway?
Yes, I am.
In 1911, when the building was built, one of the masons was Sam Stein, who they named Stein Highway after. He opened Stein and Company, was the first tenant here. That's a shipping crate that we found in the rafters that came in on, it's PRR, Pennsylvania Railroad, right down the street, about 1913.
No way, that's the number there, the 510?
Yep, so that's the shipping number, and it was Stein and Company, Seaford, Delaware, Pennsylvania Railroad. So we found that, and I actually moved it around for about 6 months and never flipped it over, and I was carrying it to the dumpster. And I was carrying it, and I was like, I had flipped it. It had been flipped around because they were using it for stacking boxes on. And I just had been moving it like that, and I actually flipped it around, and I caught that. And I'd been looking for something like that through the whole process. I'm like, we're taking this down to the studs. There's got to be something. So that was pretty neat there. So.
Now I see where the mission comes from, man.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about every fiber. What
does
that mean?
It's a little bit of a nod to DuPont. It's Seaford, DuPont nylon is basically what started Seaford. That's what was the big boom for Seaford. And it's connections, fibers, it's what connects us. So, our mission statement is, remembering our heritage, connecting community, building a legacy. It's past, present, future. I know it's.
Say it one more time. Say it one more time. Man.
You're gonna make me cry. Give me a second. So, it's Give me a second.
Yeah, take your time, brother.
So it's remembering our heritage, connecting the community, building a legacy, past, present, future. So, I mean, I'm third generation Seaford. You know, my grandfather built Sussex Hardware, your building. My dad did Cranston Funeral Home. I'm doing this. So it's my chance to give back to the community. You know, and it's those connections with the people. That's what keeps this moving forward. So it's a big deal.
And you know what?
And guess who just walked in?
Who?
That's my father back there.
No way.
Yeah.
Introduce
Yeah.
me to your pops, man.
Dad, this is Jose.
How you doing, John Cranston?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
He is owner of the old Sussex Hardware building.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have a business.
So we're just kind of chatting about, you know, some stuff around
My father
here.
built that building.
Yeah, he told me. All
Yeah,
right,
we
I
were
see
just looking at the
pictures.
pictures.
Oh, okay.
That is
So-
awesome. Nice to meet you.
nice
Nice to meet you,
Jose.
man. Same here. And you know what's so crazy? You just gave me your mission statement. You got to come over. When you walk into my building, in my conference room, real big is my vision statement, which is developing strategic alliances to strengthen communities. Developing strategic alliances to strengthen communities.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? It's
We're all doing the same thing.
it's been a pleasure to meet you, brother.
Cool, man.
Seriously.
Yeah. This has been good.
Man,
Yeah.
It's been
It's all
good,
good.
man.
Yeah.
Same here.